Baby Don't Shoot, a Mario Gangiona romance novella. Written by Sally Strait, narrated by Gray Trainer. Copyright 2025. To support this podcast, give it 5 stars and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Listener discretion is advised. Chapter 2. Outside, the tide crashed and its thunder clamored into the bathroom, concealing Ted's lumbering steps and the slam of the stall door behind him, eliciting a quake through the cheap metal of the surrounding frame. The graffiti of the coffee-brown stall walls encircled him, balloon letters and scratchy words providing more filth than a toilet ever could. One read, "Adam's your fag, just call. Fuck the sand into me," said another. And lastly, "You'll die and eat shit on the way." Through a vertical slit between stall and wall, Ted winced seeing his abandoned chair next to the shower. Though he was more concerned about that critical voice from moments ago, one that he knew was in his head but sounded so irregular. Nothing like his mind's constant drone of what computer program changes needed to be made, with what code, while also peppering in a string of insults about his appearance. Yuck. Haggard. Used without real use. The slapping steps then grew louder, and a pair of bronze, shapely legs hid his collapsible chair from Ted's limited view. The feet stopped, and Ted looked up to see the point of a nose blur into the back of a head, one with loose, big curls, which reminded him of chest hair he'd seen in Playgirl magazines that his mother hid under her bed, figuring a child would never question the unevenness of a mattress, let alone the sizable lump in only one detectable area. Like the glossy, fecund 1970s chest hair, only with bigger curls, this dark hair gave Ted a tingly feeling across his right arm, as if the head were resting there, gently readjusting every few minutes or so, like the owner was lounging his upper half in Ted's lap, reading a book, while Ted read the paper over him. Ted hadn't opened a newspaper in over a decade. Print news made the unforgiving world too tangible. He preferred to get his information online, sharing a New York Times login with a colleague. It was also cheaper that way. But to feel this full head of hair brush up against his arm, Ted would subscribe to 1,000 newspapers and even more tabloids, including the National Enquirer, one that might have a headline in his honor, "Middle-aged perv peeps his way to catching feelings." But he couldn't help it. The view was too golden and virile, a buck pierced by the beams of a setting sun. Ted's lips parted, 2 pink slugs unzipping from one another, a gossamer of saliva maintaining connection. But those soft feelings, that comforting sensation on his arm of a light brush, became a fingernail dragging itself along a parade of sensitive veins, as the stranger's head tilted, in confusion. The young man had surely seen Ted's chair and was now looking for its owner. Was he a good citizen, or merely wary of watching eyes? The head and its voluminous curls turned, revealing the face. Thank God Ted had thought to bring his knees to his chin, hiding his lower, stiffening half from visibility. However, the true ethereal gift for Ted in that bathroom was not the wherewithal to clutch his legs in concealment, also hiding his growing erection, but the opportunity to bear witness to that beatific face. Ted had realized from the young man's overall shape that he had spotted him on the beach earlier, one of many muscular, agile young men, this particular one wearing an emerald hat. It's not that Ted thought little of this guy upon first sun-bleached glance, but deciphering each beautiful person in a mass of them was like one's last hour in a museum of fine arts. You get exhausted by the glare of such magnificence that you stop seeing any unique charm, longing for the darkness behind your eyes. This sight through the crack in the stall, however, stretched Ted's pupils to the hilt. It was the gentility of this young man that drew Ted first, an open expression across his tan, smooth face as he swiveled his head around for whoever might have lost their chair. Raised eyebrows, thick and tall, 2 hedges giving the eyes privacy from whatever wandering thing trailed across that expansive forehead, glowing as brilliant as fresh honey. "Hey, did someone leave their chair?" The young man's light tan sandals scraped across the sandy cement floor a heavy step, but a gliding gait, and away the young man slipped from Ted's view. Then everything returned to its sad, lonely truth. The temperature dropped, and Ted's insides tightened. He could feel how hungover he was. His muscles ached, and the sunburn, earned by forgetting to bring a hat, pulsated on the crown of his head. The rotating giddy feeling in his chest, like hanging from an active Ferris wheel, along with a throbbing in his penis, began to subside. Ted hadn't even realized his erection was slowly arcing to full mast, ready to set sail. But to behold something so breathtaking was bound to pool blood where it's born. To Ted, to anyone, it would have been rude to stay inert or dry or nonplussed in the presence of a perfect someone who appeared both hard and soft as if swaddled in gold leaf. Anyone? Your chair? The assertive voice mixed with the receding rake of a spent wave. All right, suit yourself. The young man's voice quieted now that he felt alone, unburdened. The dutiful Boy Scout made his attempts at a chair rescue. Suit yourself. The foot scrapes returned. Ted looked up as the echoing steps rained down upon him, the young stranger's shadow also warping the light overhead. Ted returned to the gap in the stall, an obvious and hungry giveaway if the young man had been looking. But he wasn't. The guy's back was to the bathroom stalls. His focus was on the shower. With a smack, the young man brought a fist to the activating button, and down poured the rain, flooding the parts exposed, slicking the others unseen. Balanced on the toilet, made of a darker, more worn kind of metal than the shower across the way, Ted's butt, in his mind his best feature, took on the blunt, unforgiving curves and edges of the U-shaped seat. His arms ached at the wrist, practically shaking from holding his knees to his chest, but that was back of mind, as was the real world, full of pain and little promise that nearly always devolved into the former. Now bliss anchored itself at the forefront, the twinkly kind, where long-term memory kicks into high gear with a permanent marker and no use for lowercase letters. Ted's erection and that giddy feeling, this time the whole of the Ferris wheel, returned. The falling water practically bounced off the young man's hair, a movement as springy as his locks. From there it pooled in secret along his scalp, before breaking apart. A delta formed over an amber hilly landscape that John Steinbeck would particularly appreciate. Streams rode around the circumference of the ears, pitched high, nearly elfin, and slid down the soft ridges to the lobes, freestanding from the head, and wrapped around the neck, wild with dark baby hairs stacked like tiers of wild ivy. A shudder rippled through Ted, breaking his daisy chain grip, and he tilted forward in slow free fall, now terrified he was about to make a notifying sound and betray his clandestine front row seat. But he also felt a flash of anger that he should miss a millisecond of this. The tip of his right shoe landed on the concrete floor, steadying him, and Ted exhaled slowly, as if cooling something far too hot, and returned to hugging himself on his harsh throne. To Ted, the continued spit of the shower meant that he had avoided detection despite the near fall, but he could only be sure if he returned to his vista. Please, 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 he thought, a bag as deep as if his very life hung in the balance. And, with the precision of a lion tracking, Ted slid his eye back into place at the stall's gap. Another gentle exhale left him, but a matching inhale wouldn't follow for another 20 seconds, as the oasis grew more vibrant and the erection in Ted's pants began to pulsate, a steady knock at the door. The young man had planted his hands against the shower wall, fingers outlined by the very heat they were emanating across the metal. Engaged by the pose, rounded, his muscled shoulders were peaks vying to reach his ears. The young man held this position as if he were being frisked or in repose for some asinine workout that required pushing yourself off a wall, keeping a steady form, holding a certain degree. One aspect out of alignment meant the move meant nothing, or worse, was doing harm. Ted could add envy to his list of feelings. It was the kind of stretch his doctor was always getting him to do. You sit at a computer all day and I'm worried about your drinking. What are you doing for your physical health? Didn't doctors know that simply being alive was nearly too much for a lot of people to endure? Not everyone was born to want to do push ups and wall sits, especially when sleeping late and sitting with a hunch felt so much better. Treats among life's constant brutalities. But this young man showering was almost certainly the kind who craved carrots and wouldn't think of not going to the gym every day. Probably to him, what could pizza provide? What could a television say that would prompt this 20-year-old to turn his solution for existential dread away from weight rooms and juiceries rife with elixirs that changed the color of your stool and shocked had you screaming mid-morning at the toilet bowl? The expanse of his back, the tapestry of cords and grooves and divots divine, quieted Ted's mind over his own insecurities and pitfalls, though his erection had yet to waver. In fact, his penis had moved past a knocking throb and quickened to an indecipherable pulsation, a hummingbird's metronome, sandwiched between Ted's chest and upper thigh. The young man's back was nothing short of a miracle. It was the inverted triangle, the perfect physique paired with a posture that any cane-shaped midlifer would kill and kill again to have. Ted wasn't quite at decrepitude, buying some time with a spine straightener he got online, but not too much time that he could continue to hold off on the morning stretches his doctor printed out for him. Diagrams of an expressionless, vaguely female figure practicing different stretches in different areas of a house to detail either how ordinary the exercises were or how rich this figure was to have so many different rooms. Ted wasn't sure. It was the dimples that did it. At the base of the young man's back sat and squirmed two identical dimples, neighbors across from one another, a quick trip over the spine. And watching the circles move as the young man swiveled his hips, assuredly an effort to remove the sand trapped in his bathing suit, an image flashed into Ted's mind of scooping caramel from these hollows, using only his tongue. No matter the sand or suntan lotion mixed in, the caramel lifted from these two shallow caves would make Ted's life complete, certain, worth living with a cherry on top. But who needed the cherry with a mouthful of butter, salt, sugar, and cream from the finest dish in town, in the world? Yo, Mario! The stranger's call, a different stranger with a deeper, more expected tone, oafish, caused Ted to jerk away from his fantasy conjured and the view of his new favorite thing. People could have their Hawaiian beaches with skies of tangerine and keep their manic Christmas mornings. Ted just wanted himself in the stall and this young man under the shower forever. Why live any other way when you know it could be so good? It would never get old. Ted knew it. But Ted didn't know that dashing away from the gap, from the hallowed shower scene, would elicit just enough friction, his chest ironing over the head of his penis, swollen and volatile. Yes, the motion was over layers of clothing, and yes, it was only a quick righting movement, but it was enough to cause release, and not the whimpering kind. As another set of slapping footsteps entered the bathroom, a heavier pair, nearly plodding, the shower quieted to a trickle. It was only the sound of Ted's accidental orgasm, a burst in his pants like a teenager knocks over a bottle of wine at the sound of the rising garage door. Splat, crash, an explosion all over the marble floor. Only it was all in Ted's decades-old pair of tighty-whities. And such a release demanded sound, an electricity rolling up from Ted's core, racing up arms and chest to jump on the throat. Sing out, let the world know. His tongue practically roiling like the cerulean sea, Ted wanted to exclaim and proselytize with the images of that back, so brawny and fresh with its subtle, easy movements, poetry in motion, besting out any stupid bird taking flight or lazy cloud that anyone with eyes could see was nothing more than vapor. This young man had provided Ted with something he'd carry with him for the rest of his life, a memory that would last longer than the remaining follicles on his head, bring his anxious mind comfort until his dying day. This opportunity had provided a reason to live, ratified the very act of remembering. So it was only fitting that Ted cry out and thank the heavens for such a bounty. Ted's neck snapped back as his underwear became more and more saturated, a full silo unloading, and though it meant giving himself away, and those new set of footsteps meant a bigger audience to his public unmasking, Ted needed to express himself in monosyllabic song. "Oh!" he cried. That was Baby Don't Shoot, a Mario Gangiona romance novella, written by Sally Strait and performed by Gray Trainor. Did you enjoy yourself? Good. Then join us next Wednesday for the next installment. Consider supporting the author at buymeacoffee.com/Sally Strait. That's buymeacoffee.com/Sally Strait. SALLYSTRAIT. Baby Don't Shoot is a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, places, events, and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead or actual events is purely coincidental. No generative artificial intelligence was used in the writing of this work.